Hi, and welcome to Knock Your Socks Off, the podcast. I'm Ravi.
I'm Hannah.
And Hannah, what are you knocking my socks off with today?
Well, it happens to be the week of May 4th, and us being Star Wars fans, that means it's the week of May the 4th in the funness of it all. So today we're talking about if Star Wars' releases this week around May the 4th knocked our socks off.
Interesting.
Are you ready?
I am always ready to talk Star Wars. I have been talking Star Wars since I was a baby.
A wee lad.
A wee lad.
Uh-huh. Okay, great. Well, what two releases came out?
So the big ones, obviously, this is a fun question for you, actually.
Okay.
So the two releases, I'll just say them real quick, is the series finale for Bad Batch.
Yep.
And then the Tales of the Empire, which is a six episode miniseries.
Mm-hmm.
You can get it done in like an hour and a half. Which one to you is the bigger one? That's like the better question.
That's a great angle on the question. To me, the series finale is a bigger deal.
For Bad Batch?
Yeah, for Bad Batch.
And
because
why?
we have 3 seasons of it, and it ties into past shows and stories and everything.
I'm trying to lead you on. It ties it into one of your favorite aspects, right, of Star Wars?
Clones.
Yeah.
And I love the clones.
There you go.
And I've loved Bad Batch for a long time as them, and I love the show. I mean, I love the series too,
Mm-hmm.
but I've loved the characters of the Bad Batch for a long time. Do you have a favorite Bad Batch character?
It'd have to be Crosshair.
Oh.
Because he's so moody, and I see a lot of myself in him with the mood swings.
Nice. Yeah.
Now, granted, I'm not saying like he has reasons to have mood swings.
Sure.
I mean, sure, I'm sure I do too, but his are they're way more intense than my reasonings for having mood swings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mine is simply like I burned my English muffin and now I pissed off.
Wow. Now the world's going to burn.
His is like, contemplating the ideas of like the Empire and good, bad, going against your
Following orders.
Yeah.
All the things.
Good soldiers follow orders.
It's true. I mean, just briefly, my favorite Bad Batch is Echo, but that's because he's the reg, and I've just had a lot longer with Echo. But I love all of them and everything. But what was of the 2 releases? What's the bigger deal to you? What were you more excited about?
I think I'm going to go with Bad Batch as well, primarily because similar, like it is kind of the last story that is directly connected to like the clones. It follows obviously the Clone Force 99 who were there from the get-go with the whole Clone Wars series. So their story kind of coming to an end feels like it also is a closure and an end to the clones story, if you will, because we do see discussions during Bad Batch around like the political nature of what is the Old Republic, Galactic Empire doing, how are they treating these individuals who serve for a couple of years. Some still serve, some are discharged or whatever. So and the series ends where you have some clones that are going to go and help some senators like fight for clone rights. But for the most part, like the story of the clones like really feels like it kind of ends with the Bad Batch and everything.
Nice. I mean, either way, we were excited for both projects, so we'll be talking about them.
Yeah.
And really, the tie-in for both as well, for any of us who love the animated series at large of Star Wars, is also Dave Filoni. So we're also just like very invested because we're big fans of Filoni, and being able to have 2 projects of his come out in 1 week, or essentially, I mean, the Bad Batch has been coming out for a while too, but the essence of 2 notable projects being in the world, a series finale and an entire mini series that we can just sit and watch an hour and a half, is so exciting. What are your favorite parts about Filoni, the Filoniverse, in a sense, or like what do you love about the Filoniverse?
His hat.
His hat, sure. Yeah.
His hat. No, I think the thing with Filoni that I've always admired, and I've definitely told you this, and it's a really bad joke, but I'm still going to say it. Filoni, as I'm currently aware, does not have any children of his own. But I like to think that it's because he was, why have just a couple kids and, give them issues when I could create amazing stories and characters and situations that will give trauma to an entire generation of fans.
Truly.
And I think that is the part that, like, I say that jokingly, but in some ways I am serious, where he has blessed us with very good storytelling. He, in a way, along with his creative team, because it's not just one individual, it's an entire creative team, writers, animators, the whole shebang. Like, they really kind of helped, I feel like, light a fire under Star Wars' butt and made it kind of like cool and interesting again. Make Star Wars great again.
Yeah, well, sure.
Put that on a cowboy hat.
Yeah, they should find it at Celebration in 2025.
There you go.
The merchandise to be had.
Right.
I love that. We were discussing after finishing Tales of the Empire, one of my favorite parts that Filoni has added to Star Wars Galaxy universe. What is it? Is it the Star Wars universe, Star Wars Galaxy? You know how like other ones have their own kind of claim to like, this is the MCU. Like
Sure.
this is like,
I think,
whatever.
Well, I think
What is
the
the Star Wars?
MCU kind of started the whole idea of things are universes.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I remember shortly after the MCU like branding term was put out there, like Doctor Who started being like the Whoverse.
Sure.
And that type of stuff.
Sure. Does Star Wars have one then?
I feel like it's just, canon, non-canon.
Fair. Okay.
So like, and then some fans take it as far as like the Disney Star Wars and the non-Disney Star Wars.
Sure. And then Legends and
Yeah, exactly. And that all ties in.
layers to it.
The layers.
Fair.
But I think it's just it's just Star Wars.
To the Star Wars.
To the Star Wars.
Star Wars.
The Star Wars.
Anyway, back to the Filoni love, though, is one of the things I've loved about Filoni's storytelling and the kind of gaps that he's filled a lot for all of us, like kind of into spaces of, where there were pauses of storytelling to, especially starting with the Clone Wars kind of thing to flesh out what was happening there, is I really love that he, I feel like Star Wars really painted a space of light and dark, Sith and Jedi, and that was where choice was, or that was where you were predestined to go, or whatever, all these things. A lot of people can say either this Jedi or the Sith or are both cult-like, or kind of this space of like they have intense followings. They have like, you kind of have to pick one or the other. And I really love that Dave Filoni continues to tell us stories that not only speak to free will, but speak to free will outside of the Jedi and Sith, and being able to give us depictions of the clones who are finding their individuality and finding where they want to have their free will. Ahsoka, who, essentially kind of like in the Clone Wars arcs goes into more of a gray Jedi space. And then, we've seen more of her, even as we talk about Tales of the Empire, like Barriss finding a space where maybe she doesn't really necessarily claim, definitely not Inquisitor, definitely probably not Jedi, but like some balance in between and inspiring that. And then I even think like Chopper being like a murder droid that we all love is like kind of finding this like unique space of
where does he exist?
Where does he exist? And it doesn't have to be this good or bad. Like we all love Chopper, but he's also like this little crazy kook of a person,
right?
of a droid. And so this space that I think just love that Filoni continues to expand what we think of when we think of the light and the dark side, or Jedi and Sith within the Star Wars world, universe, galaxy.
No, I think he's definitely done an amazing job of talking and bringing light to the gray. And like, Star Wars it's a war story, and war is never black and white. There's a ton of gray.
Exactly.
And his story work is definitely bringing that up. And that's not to say like Dave is the only person currently in Star Wars that's doing that. Like, we have other great directors and writers that are also doing that in various forms of media. The books, like the High Republic stories, talk a lot about that kind of gray, and talking downfall of Jedi. I don't read, so I'll probably never get to see that stuff until Acolyte comes out. And then,
but even in the video games, I mean, there's
that's
great
true. That's true.
Great,
yeah.
Working in the gray and how all of it exists in one thing. So yes, Dave's not the only one doing it, but we're talking about two Dave projects right now. So we're just gonna shout Filoni out with the exactly
howdy cowboy hat.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's dive into Bad Batch then.
Sure.
The question of did it knock your socks off is the first. And we can talk about the series, the season, the finale.
I think the finale, because the finale is the thing that we just saw.
Fair.
And you look at the entire show in its entirety. It's 3 seasons. First season is kind of like, what is going on? Second season is like, okay, there's what is like the conflict, and then third season is kind of resolving that conflict. And the final episode, I'll say right off the bat, it definitely knocked my socks off because they didn't do the thing that I thought they would do. They didn't do And if you're this far into the pod already, I don't know how many minutes we're in, but if you're this far in and you didn't realize there will be spoilers, there are spoilers galore. So
and then
yeah, make sure you watch the stuff. But yeah, the finale definitely knocked my socks off because they did not do the thing I thought they would do, which is that final battle where they're trying to free Omega. They didn't have Rex and a giant rebellious group of clones come in and fuck everything up. They didn't kill off any more of the main Bad Batch group. They didn't do any kind of crazy big reveals where a Ventress or a Fennec or Boba Fett or whatever extra character in the Star Wars universe shows up. It was very much them and their group completing their mission and riding off into the sunset. And that, by doing that, it blew my socks off because I was like, it's a happy ending. And for once in my life, because I'm usually the type of person that's like, yes, I want to see some real emotional damage. But it's also remembering happy things can be emotionally not damaging, but can be emotional and ride that train. So definitely fucking blew my socks off there.
Nice.
What about for you? Did it blow your socks off?
I would say yes. And I think similarly, I definitely went into it thinking for sure they're all gonna die. My one guess was okay, maybe Omega will survive, but they're for sure all gonna die. There's no tie-in for us to have seen the clones anywhere else that we know of, in a sense, coming up in the future. And so I just assumed, obviously some clones survive. We see some in different live action stuff, but the essence of we don't see them. And so having them all survive was a lovely, it just felt super good. And then I was definitely knocked my socks off in that way. It also didn't mean that there was no it wasn't fully just a beautiful downward going down a hill and chilling. They obviously fought for it. They stood for each other. They continued to not leave brothers behind. They continued to fight for Omega. Omega stepped up and emulated Echo. It was very cute. They had they had tie-ins that worked, but it wasn't just the smoothest of sailing. But they all did get to have essentially a long life, which I think for anybody who experiences war or a space where you're continually noting I'm gonna die today, or Crosshair basically knew going into the final battle, if you will, that I'm not coming out, you know what I mean? I've come in and out so once too many times almost already, there's no way I'm going in and coming back out, and he still did it. And so there's this space where it's when you live your life thinking I'm out today, the ability to live a full life where you get to have long hair and wrinkles and see your faux daughter off to big school,
Hunter,
big
Hunter
war.
in that epilogue scene, Hunter looked his character is based off of Rambo from the 70s and the 80s. He looked like a vet. He looked like one of a vet that come back from war. I think character design wise, they did a really good job with that.
I think so too.
You feel for this guy that's he's gone through literal hell and back, and hopefully, thankfully, in that time period or that time jump, which according to the internet, it's roughly 2 decades, which ties into just before, maybe just after the events of Episode 4 for Star Wars.
Yeah.
Hopefully he had a quiet and chill life and just went fishing every day.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I would hope for.
Yeah, 100%. So it definitely knocked my socks off, and there was definitely a moment of no way this is happy. There's got to be some other final, weird swing that Filoni will throw in there that hurts us all in the heart. But then she just flew off into the rebellion.
Into the rebellion.
What are your thoughts as to where Omega was going in that end epilogue?
She does say, right, that the rebellion is growing. They're looking for pilots. I want to think and imagine that she, I want to imagine that she joined Rogue Squadron, that she was even potentially part of Red 5 or the Red Group or whatever, or Yellow or whatever, one of the groups that actually attacked the Death Star. And I want to imagine that she is part of that bigger universe, because again, the way Star Wars is leading and going, there will be a point at some point in history where someone will be I know every single moment of every single character in Star Wars from start to finish because we've covered it all. But there is just something nice about knowing that she took her skills and her knowledge and helped the rebellion in a way that she felt was needed. So
yeah.
The sad truth is because we know a couple of things, and this is where we get not sad, but like we know that the project that Hemlock was working on to make clones for Papa Palpatine,
The Necromancer.
it's called Project Necromancer.
Mhm.
We know that Hux's like uncle or dad or whatever during the events of Mandalorian, he revitalizes that program.
Mm-hmm.
And in the final sequences and scenes, the research is all destroyed. Hemlock is murdered. Well, rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
But he does say
Also falls to his death, so who knows?
It's true.
Star
Who
Wars.
but he did say that like as long as Omega is around,
Mhm.
they have the information. So
Sure.
while she's flying into the sunset and there's like this hope that she also like has a good fulfilling life and does what she believes in, the fact that we know Project Necromancer comes back in some way and the fact that we know that she's around somewhere makes it a little like yay, but
Fair.
so that part is where I'm like, oh my god, Filoni still may have like hurt us little jab, little tiny prick. And just
if you
like
think about it,
think about it,
further,
sit and think about it. Think about it.
sadness.
Yeah. So
Crying.
that part is where I'm like, hopefully she's okay, but I don't know.
Yeah, and speaking of the Necromancer project, they also name dropped the Stardust project.
They do.
So that was a fun little. Yeah, they definitely did some tie-ins to other Star Wars entities, but it just didn't feel like just fan service or whatever. It felt like even that was well put in and then moved on.
It's funny that there's the mention of like Stardust.
Mm-hmm.
In Bad Batch, the TIE Fighter Crazy program that Thrawn ultimately does, that we realize that Morgan is actually responsible for in Tales of the Empire. Like, it's funny that like we learn a lot about like the financials of the Empire. Like, where do we invest our money in and stuff? Like, there's got to be some like accounting nerd that is like
somewhere
has like figured all this out.
There were so many bank arcs in Clone Wars. Like there can't be somebody who's like, we can make this cool. There's money is involved.
Money's involved. Yeah.
We can do it. Like
I really hope somebody. It has to exist. Somebody has done like the financial. Like, what's the cost of the Death Star? What's the cost of like Hemlock's project? What's this cost? Like all that fun stuff.
I mean, they use free labor to make the Death Star, so we know that.
That's true. Yeah.
There's been these teases all through different notes.
Yeah.
But yeah, money is highly, highly important. Okay, our kind of one of our last things for this Bad Batch conversation is we were both grateful, RIP in the best of ways, but that Tech remained he was an important death kind of along the storyline. And how that fulfilled what the rest of the Bad Batch needed to do. We were both skeptical that coming into season 3, they would reroute that somewhere else, but I'm glad that it stuck. It gave some more heart and gravitas to the necessity of surviving.
It also helped with like expectations because someone like Filoni and the folks over at like Lucasfilm and those creators, like we see a lot of these same kind of stories, not just like within Star Wars, but like just in media in general, of like the group coming together, somebody betraying the group, somebody dying but coming back and betraying the group, and et cetera, et cetera. Like we've seen that arc many, many times. So it is kind of refreshing to kind of stay the course and like this character is gone. They are done. We want that emotional impact to actually affect our characters to like grow and change. And if we bring them back, we kind of undo all this growth that we're showing. Which, at the end of the day, I'm sure Hunter and Wrecker and Crosshead would love for Tech to just walk in and be like, "What's up, guys?"
Of course. I mean, Omega had his goggles the whole time, and she would love to see Tech come back the whole time.
Yeah.
But the ability for his death to keep creating the stakes that it needed to have for them, and then even in that last episode where Crosshair said, like, "Hey, like Clone Force 99 died Tech," but it's like they still all showed up for each other, and it didn't mean that their heart died in a sense, but it was just like the fact that they had to act as this certain band of brothers, and yet they kept at it almost like not in honor of Tech, but probably in some subconscious way, for each other. Just a beautiful thing. So
truly.
What do you think is the future of the clones in Star Wars storytelling? Or maybe if you were to create a project or something of that nature, what would you want to see?
Similar to like the idea of like Tech staying dead, and I do feel closure with this show. Like I feel like I've seen the clones. Like I remember in 2003, 2002, when I went and I saw Attack of the Clones with my brothers and my dad, and seeing those clones for the first time, you know, and then now 20 something years later, I want to be like, the story's done. Like I've gone enough clone story. I don't want to like go back and like do more clone stories, because again, I feel like it's a disservice, because it becomes like that idea of like beating a dead horse.
Yeah, I
like,
hear you.
We get it. We got good story. It's left like this nice, happy feeling. Like, why go back? Like, that being said, if you want to do like, I always thought an anthology series around somebody like Rex would be interesting, jumping around in different time periods, doing something where it's like Rex is kicking it and, you know, running around post episode 6, and he's on some kind of mission, but it ties into like his life post episode 3 and all that stuff. Like I think that would be interesting, but I don't think we need to see, okay, the Bad Batch are done, but then what about the rest of it? Like,
where's Cody?
Like, I don't think we need that level of detail.
Sure.
And I really hope we don't get that.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
Are you different? Are you opposite?
I'm not opposite, because I do hear what you're saying, for the sake of like, I would rather invest in new original storytelling in the Star Wars world. You know, I very much am on the side of like telling stories outside of the Skywalker saga, and that would, I think, also bleed into like we've had a lot of clone stories, and so being able to not also keep telling the same ish story or whatnot. But at the same time, Rex is one of my all-time favorite Star Wars, not the, but one of my favorite Star Wars characters. And so being able to, have more time with Rex would be great. But I don't need it in order to stay a Star Wars fan or anything, but I would be excited about it. But I also very much hear what you're saying is kind of keeping it where it's at. And I do also similarly feel closure to not even just like the Bad Batch story, but to like what the clones did, and what the potential is that like clones at large, Bad Batch and beyond, like could have found peace. I mean, we saw like clones that found peace throughout the Clone Wars too.
Yeah, we definitely
who ran away from all of the Republic and being able to find their own space.
Families.
Yeah, living on farms quietly, you know, just keeping the peace. But so we know it's possible, and so I think there is also good closure there. But I would be excited if there was more Rex storytelling.
Well, Celebration in 2025. I'm sure there will be something where Filoni comes out wearing a T-shirt, and I do feel like there will be something clone related. I just really hope it's not like a full-on, we're following Clone Group 25.
Sure. And and
it's like, why?
They're with Kit Fisto the whole time, so now we're getting a Kit Fisto and his crew.
There's another Jedi running around, because the galaxy needs more Jedi after the fact they were all annihilated. Surprise, only 12 died.
Yeah. One of the angles in the future, as you were talking about anthology series, could be like a Tales of the Clones or something. But it doesn't have to look in that way. But speaking of Tales of fill in the blank, we got a new Tales of the Empire, you know, in lieu or whatnot of Tales of the Jedi from last year. And what were your expectations going into Tales of the Empire?
I think you should start with your expectations.
My expectations?
Because mine were just general hype. I was excited.
You were hyped.
I was like, I love the Empire. I think evil destruction is great, but that's because I'm like a kid still, and I like pew 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 explosions.
Sure.
But you had an interesting...
I did. I was not excited about it.
Well, there goes the phone.
I was not excited about it, and for largely the reason of just Tales of the Empire is, from the outside looking in, it just feels like it's a story, or it's going to tell positive hype stories about being a bad guy. And there's a lot of really beautiful real life stories of people being the good guy, and we have heroes in our real life. Shout out to superheroes that exist in our world too. But there's a lot of bad guys in our world, and it's not hard to see the bad guys, in a sense, thriving in our real life all the time. And so to me, putting out a show that even in a fantasy sci-fi world, hypes up being a bad guy. I was not excited about, and I especially wasn't excited about finding the nuance or finding like the why someone becomes that.
Sure.
Because badness is all around us, and I'm like, I don't want to focus on it. Largely for me, entertainment or stories, not necessarily being an escape to like, oh, the world is all good and rainbows, but the space of our stories being able to tell stories that do give us hope and do give us like potential ahead that feels positive, are ones that I more enjoy usually. And so the space of having, a very focused dark side, and from what the trailers were and whatnot, as we dive into it, that my enjoyment of it definitely changed from what I went into it expecting, but I was not excited at first. So
then after watching the 6 episodes, the 2 story arcs, what are your thoughts?
Did it knock my socks off?
Did it knock your socks off? Yeah.
It did. I had for me, I had large emotional connections to both stories, but really to the second arc, which is around Barris, and for sure really enjoyed it and felt that, again, kind of like I was saying earlier, to the storytelling of even though it's talking about Tales of the Empire, and so it feels like it's just going to be a one-sided story, there's a lot of nuance in there. And then also specifically in the Barris story, speaking to her finding balance, like kind of by going into the dark side, really by seeing what both the Jedi and the Inquisitor life held, being able to choose, like, I don't want either of those actually. And so like there's a different middle ground to be had.
Trying the Inquisitor life. You know what? The Jedi suck. They're kind of crazy cultists. Let's see what the other side's got. Oh, it's the same shit.
It's the same shit. There you go.
No, I like that though. I mean, it's true. Like, Barris definitely was trying to figure out her way, and I think her 3 episodes arc. It wasn't my favorite. I like the Morgan arc more.
Yeah,
but that's because Thrawn was in it. And they're like, is an automatic, like, I'm interested because he's creepy and weird. And he just pulls. What can I say? He just pulls.
Yeah.
Just
great.
He's a very pretty man. Very blue.
It's a good time.
It's a great time.
When Thrawn's on screen, something beautiful is gonna be said. Some eloquent poetry of why yeah, exactly.
Why
you should go.
Why the Empire, and he says it perfectly, I think, like to Morgan, and I'm not saying verbatim, I'm just paraphrasing, but basically he said, I like the idea of the Empire, but how they're going about empiring is stupid, and I have a better idea. Basically is what he said, and is what we have seen up until, the events of Ahsoka and at the very, very end. So it's interesting, for sure.
It is interesting. What did you like about the Morgan arc then? In addition to
like the Thrawn stuff, it's also just seeing someone like the Night Sisters are not good, but they're also not bad. They're just doing things in their self-interest. And I think what's interesting with that is we saw someone who goes through pure tragedy, right? Like she witnesses her mother being murdered in front of her from a psychotic droid, Grievous, and all of her entire culture, her people, and then being left alone and isolated, that fear. And then that fear of like staying isolated and alone and trying to like rebuild and have your people and your culture, and realizing that you're not necessarily going to find that. It's a great story arc of hers. And we knew very little of Morgan in the episode that we saw her in Mandalorian, and then in Ahsoka we learned a little bit more. But this really like adds the why. Why is she doing what she's doing? And I think that was like super interesting to me. Like see that like progression. And again, it's like Morgan's not a good character at the end of the day. She is bad to the bone. Like she wants to cause pain because she says a lot. There's a line she says where, my world has been burning since I was a child.
Yeah, why wouldn't yours?
Why wouldn't yours? Like, right? So like there's no way she can be redeemed, right? She's fucked, unfortunately. And I think it's just interesting to see the why and the how, and like how do we get to this point? And that arc does a really, really good job with that.
Yeah, I really also, like you noted, and you can probably expand on this, but the essence of Morgan using the Empire, like kind of this, like the title of the show being Tales of the Empire, but she, yeah, in a sense, partnering with Thrawn, like uses the Empire rather than her just being simply a part of the Empire. Like she, uses them, like they're using her obviously, but like she uses them also, like as a pawn, kind of, especially post episode 6 kind of stuff. But like, can you expand on that? What your thoughts on her using?
Well, I think it also ties back into like Tales of the Jedi. You know, it's the story of Dooku and it's the story of Ahsoka, both who have connections to the Jedi. Both are Jedi at one point, but both by the end, or adult, or whatever you want to say, like they're no longer Jedi. They themselves use the Jedi to like their own means and their growth and things. And I'm starting to feel like the Tales of Blank is going to be more the story of how an organization, a group, religion, whatever you want to call it in the Star Wars universe, actually is being used or doesn't fully align with like individual characters and their kind of development, if you will.
Ooh, that's a good one.
So like if there's gonna be like a Tales of the Clones, for example, you know, I think it would be potentially about stories of like the defectors, leaving them, not agreeing with like the philosophy of the clones. Could potentially be about like the clones that naturally turn and are like, yeah, you're right, the Jedi are evil. Yeah, I should turn on my brothers that don't believe in this. Like those might be the stories that we get, which will be super dark.
Super dark, because we've already seen clones who accept being clones, and it's like kind of Tales of the Jedi and Tales of the Empire really actually focus around people who are questioning that system that they're in. So being able to like get it all and find that nuance is a beautiful thing.
Very.
So yeah. And I like, we met the Morgan character in Mandalorian, but she was even in that space, you know, still circling around Ahsoka, or like that was why she was in the Mando show anyway. And then being able to be in the, like, she was largely in the, you know, featured in the Ahsoka show. Does this arc of like knowing more about Morgan impact your view on her role in Ahsoka or all those things?
No, 1,000%.
Yeah.
If I lost my parents or my mother in the way that she lost hers, you bet your ass I'm going to build a giant hyperdrive thing, go find the remnants of an ancient evil, bring them back, and then fuck everything up to like get my revenge. Yeah, like I think
he loves his mom.
I think that is like, that helps definitely like make her decision making what she does. I think it adds a lot, and I think it makes the character much more much more interesting. There's a quote somewhere, again paraphrasing, like the way to do a really good villain in story is make them relatable. If you can make a villain relatable, they are truly horrific and scary. And like that's what they've done with Morgan. So more of that.
Yeah.
Please and thank you.
Nice. Great.
Does it change Ahsoka for you? Because I know that you're not a huge Ahsoka fan. It's like it's like that meme of the guy eating the burger. He's like, it's all right.
It's all right. Well, I'll correct you that I'm a huge Ahsoka fan.
Right. I meant the show.
Ahsoka fan.
Right.
I wasn't the biggest fan of the Ahsoka show.
Gotcha.
And I still kind of stand by that. I don't think the Morgan arc changed it drastically for me, but I do think that giving her purpose for the sake of not just being like, I don't know this character. So in the essence of, I have had zero desire or inclination to rewatch Ahsoka and to see if there was like more things that I enjoyed on a second watch. I'm after Tales of the Empire and seeing Morgan's arc, I am way more intrigued into doing a rewatch of Ahsoka to see how the knowledge of Morgan's character heightens that story at large. So possibly, but I'm not fully sold yet on being a huge advocate for the Ahsoka show right now. But I do love Ahsoka.
I'll say this, like MCU, has a problem currently where there's too much content. And I remember 20 movies ago saying they had too much content, specifically around the movie Age of Ultron, the Avengers movie. And I remember when I saw that movie, I was just like, I don't give a fuck. This is stupid.
Sure.
And then some time passed, some other content came out, and then I went back and rewatched it, and I was like, oh, this is a good film because you have all these like holes filled, like you understand more about the why and what these characters are going through, etc. And I do feel like the Tales series help with like giving more context to these characters.
Totally.
Dooku is such a more interesting character now
1,000%.
that we've gotten his like backstory.
Yeah.
Witnessing his Padawan get murdered because of the incompetence of the Jedi Council, like super interesting.
100%.
Makes it so much better, more interesting.
Totally. We had the Morgan arc, and then we also had the Barriss Offee arc.
Mm-hmm.
You were saying you like the Morgan arc better. I'm saying I liked enjoyed the Barriss arc more of the two.
Mm-hmm.
Literally cried in the last episode or whatever because it just was a beautiful tale of helping Lynn get out of the mountain, which is symbolic of the mountain of dark side and darkness in general, and it's a beautiful story and all the things. You had a really good question as we were watching it, though, which is, do you think that Vader influenced or was a part of making sure that Barriss came to the Inquisitor training? I mean, what are your takes, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the big one is, from Vader's eyes and perspective, he, as Anakin, was arresting Barriss potentially a couple months before all of this because of her terrorism that she caused at the Jedi Temple and blaming it on Ahsoka. I don't know if he necessarily would have like been that kind of in the weeds, if you will.
Sure.
Like he is, for all intents and purposes, like he's a lord, a general. You know, he has people like the Inquisitor, the Grand Inquisitor. That's his job to like go and find fallen Jedi and or dark users to like build out this like team or what? Yeah, this team, this Avengers group.
Inquisitors.
So I don't think he was that necessarily involved, and you know, I doubt he. I guess like the more I think about like why would he even care?
Sure.
These people are like, the way he probably views people and things is like they're just a means to an end, as opposed to like caring.
Yeah. What did you think of, in a sense, the use of Vader or the presence of Vader in episode 1 of the Barriss arc? Because also there's a space and time where a lot of times, you know, kind of overusing a character. What did you think of Vader's even just presence in the?
This is gonna sound terrible, but it's fine.
Okay.
I think it was more a marketing play than like a story play.
Tell me.
And here's the thing, like Tales of the Empire are following two characters that you would only know about if you were following the series.
Sure.
Morgan is probably an easier in for people that watch just the live action things because we see her live action Mando and Ahsoka.
Sure.
While Barriss is 100% gets her main story and everything from Clone Wars. That being said, we do see her the first time live action in Attack of the Clones. Her actual first scene is in Palpatine's office, standing in the background. But her main kind of like development as a character is all done through the Clone Wars. So I feel like Vader's presence being there is more to just kind of get people in that aren't super familiar with what is an Inquisitor, what is this group, who do they actually serve.
Sure.
By having Vader there, then it's like, oh, I get it. They're part of his group.
Sure. Yeah.
So
you know, they hopefully could have gotten that from Obi-Wan as well. I mean, they could have also gotten it from...
Sure.
But if they were watching live action, but yes, this is...
But I think the thing that like Star Wars does well that the MCU could learn from is that these can be standalone stories so that anyone could just start watching it.
Right.
And then from the visual cues be like, oh, they work for Vader. That is interesting.
Right.
I know who Vader is. As opposed to if Vader is not there and you have no idea about the Inquisitors, you didn't watch Obi-Wan Kenobi, you didn't watch Clone Wars.
Watch Rebels.
You just decide you want to watch this story, you would be very confused.
Yeah.
You would be like, what?
True.
Why are they running around with red things?
Yeah.
So I think it acts as marketing and then it acts as a good visual tell of who.
And it wasn't too much. No. He was there for a tiny bit. I thought maybe he was going to be in episodes or like of her arc, the second and third episodes of her arc, but the fact that it was just there. And again, it was, which is to me smart use of him for the sake of like his ominous presence.
Right.
He didn't say anything of note.
Didn't say
just
shit.
Breathed, and it was like Vader's in the room. So yeah, I thought, but
shiny
makes sense. Yeah, he was a good storytelling piece, but not for any development of his own
No.
anything. 100%.
Vader is truly a beating a dead horse, because like the amount of bullshit we got from the Obi-Wan Kenobi series or the Kenobi series, like with Vader, it's like, I didn't need that. I don't need to know that. I get it. I understand the guy's pain. Like,
Sure.
you've told that story like
Many times.
go on to something else.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah.
Yeah. I like it. What do you think that the Barriss arc told us about the Empire? Kind of in the essence of Morgan using the Empire kind of in her own way. What did you, in the essence of it being a tale of the Empire, what did you get from Barriss's arc?
I think it's just how piss poor the management team is.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
And like what I mean by that is, like, I'm going to go super corporate with this, but you know, it's on my mind.
Yeah.
You know, when a company takes over or merges with another company,
Sure.
there's this thing called like an assessment round where they're going in and they basically do an audit of everything. They figure out who's the team player, who's not a team player. They really kind of like drive it in. And, you know, most companies are very good at removing those individuals as opposed to those individuals removing themselves from said company. Granted, you know, the idea of like what the Grand Inquisitor did to Barriss in the beginning by having her trained the way that he had her trained would be a way to kind of like weed out who's not going to be a good fit here.
Sure.
That being said, you know, there's still like, I don't know, other telltale signs.
Yeah.
Granted, she pushes Lynn off and, you know, in theory, Lynn, you know, obviously like Lynn survived and it sounds like they did try and hunt her down, but like, why did you allow it to get to that point? Right? You know, it's like if I'm working for X tech company or computer company and I'm a disgruntled employee, you're not going to let me get to a point where I'm actively harming like the company's like overall goals. You're not going to like let me, you know, do something to the source code or whatever.
Sure.
So I think it just comes down to like, it shows like how badly run the Empire is and was at the end of the day.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah, I went corporate with that.
I like it. I like it. To me, the Barriss arc, I think really just, I think again, kind of just gonna, you know, somewhat repeat or rephrase what I was saying earlier, but the space of going into the Tales of the Empire, I thought it was just going to be a glorification of the Empire. And I definitely agree with you in the essence of the Morgan arc being one that she used the Empire for her gain, kind of rather than just like saying, oh, the Empire is the way to be. It was like she figured out how to use it. And then the essence of Barriss, being able to, by, you know, accepting her fate kind of for the sake of like, this is the hand she's dealt, this is the opportunity she's given, probably just to live, much less, you know, to thrive or anything, wasn't probably on her mind as much. But once she was kind of in that Inquisitor, in that Empire side, being able to realize like, oh, both sides are actually not only not benefiting me, but actually not even representative of the kind of person or, you know, being that I want to be.
Yep.
And so for her finding her own, you know, kind of Zen balance, but also being able to not also penalize either person. Like when the family came with their child who was, you know, at least force sensitive, right. So potentially like sent them off to, you know, someone who, if they wanted that kid to be a Jedi or not. But then also like in that final battle with Lynn, like also not just penalizing her, being like, you're this awful person that has nothing forgivable or redeemable about you. She was still saying, I forgive you. Like the world that we were handed or the cards we were dealt isn't always up to us. And also when we do get a chance to choose it, we can choose it. And there is a way out of this. And it doesn't have to just be one or the other. Really, again, spoke to me about that, you know, we can't just think that the good and the dark, or the good is the light and the dark is the bad. And those are the only two options of life. Like there's so much more in the middle. And so I was very grateful again, that it wasn't just this like rah glorification, hoorah of the Empire. So yeah. But I really enjoyed it. Yeah. And then kind of finally, like, do you think Barriss is dead?
I mean, I want to say she's still alive because I feel like there is, I mean, I don't know what I feel, because it does complete her story by kind of showing that she did pick this kind of middle ground. Mm-hmm. She is able to save someone who's like all the way gone.
Yeah.
And like it's a nice, interesting story about her views and thoughts on like, you know, groups, mm-hmm. like big culty groups and things. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I don't know what else there is to like tell like her tale, like, because it was clear at that point she was not like she's not joining the rebellion. She's just trying to help those in need that don't want to be part of any of it.
The healer. Yeah.
Healer, yeah. So I don't know if we need to see more there. I think what would be more interesting is to see what Lynn does next.
Yeah.
I think seeing an Inquisitor, Jedi to Inquisitor to then something else, I think will be quite interesting because, she does, obviously, like we see, Lynn does like some horrific shit. Just because someone lies to her, she brutally murders like a small group of villagers.
Totally.
So it'd be interesting to see that character and what she has to like kind of go through because at some point, yeah, you can be like, yeah, I'm a good guy now. It's great. It's like, no, that's not how that works. Like you have to, in a way, physically, mentally, like atone for like what you've done.
Yeah.
So it'd be kind of curious to see like what does that look like because we've seen it. Redemptions, Vader. He got off way too easy.
Yeah.
In my opinion, like
sure.
He took a helmet off, saved his kid, and then he goes to Jedi heaven.
As his hot self.
Yeah.
Not even his old, gross self.
Gross self, yeah.
He got to go into his hot Anakin self.
It's just like, what? That's what the fuck? No.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, like, on that side of things, it'll be interesting to see, like, do we get to see him now portray this redemption piece in the Ahsoka series where now he is truly going to kind of pay for what he's done by helping out this character. Clearly, because we know an Empire pops his head back, he doesn't do enough. So, I don't know, it'd be interesting to actually, like, see a proper redemption, not just, oh, I'm redeemed from a single act, because that's not how that works.
Sure. So. Or that as an Inquisitor, I just wanted to actually kill Vader. I've been trying to plot my own way to partner with Kenobi and then kill him the whole time. I would be much more interested in the Lynn potential redemption arc or her just figuring out almost her own self-forgiveness because there's like you said, like all those internal battles.
I forgot about that whole
that was the entire arc pretty much of that show.
I forgot about that until just now, and now I'm just like,
it's okay,
cool.
But I think for the sake of the Barriss arc, I think having Barriss kind of have her last breath, if you will, be seeing someone and probably as much as, I mean, obviously she went through her own internal healing to forgive herself too and was able to, be a part of the world as she could, but to hopefully inspire that in somebody else, I think Barriss would even just be satisfied with that, as her character seemed. So I'm good for that. But overall, I mean, Tales of the Empire definitely knocked my socks off and was not what I was expecting. So in the best way, came out of it. Thumbs up.
I think it beat my expectations.
Yeah.
Like I thought it was going to be a glorification of the Empire.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until we were discussing it just now that I realized these tales are not actually stories of the Jedi or the Empire. It is how people go through those systems and their stories. And I think that is truly way more interesting.
It's so much more interesting, and it's also very real. Like you can pull any sort of themes you want into life and the shit we go through.
Yeah.
And whether you have a bunch of pride in it and you're a Jedi and you're like, oh, this is the one good thing I have, and then you're like, oh, there's a darkness to me and I'm going to follow that. Or if you're in the darkness and you're like, there's no way out of this darkness ever, and then you can find that there is ways out, and it's not just because you have to be a perfect human being, but
one way out.
There's gray. What? What, just to kind of close this out, what is something or multiple things in the Star Wars conversation or content coming out that you're excited for the rest of the year?
I think the big one's got to be, it's two actually. I think it's Star Wars Underworld or Underworlds, which is that open world video game following a smuggler and seeing what the crime world is doing. I will say this though, if it turns out that the main character that you play out is a Jedi or Force sensitive, I will put the controller down and turn it off because we already have a really cool story with a Jedi running around.
Sure do.
In video. I don't need another one.
Yeah.
Please no more. So I think that I'm excited for that. And definitely Acolyte has piqued my interest. I am cautious because while Ahsoka story-wise I think was really cool because it like discussed a lot about the Force stuff, the action in Ahsoka was very like mid-tier. It was very... It's hard when you take an anime character and make them live action because it is different styles.
100%.
Like animation, you can have your characters fighting at 100 miles per hour. Live action, unless you're getting like the pros to do it, which it doesn't feel like they did. Then that's not a diss at like Rosario Dawson. It's just it's a different skill level and technique and everything.
Yes.
Those fight sequences were just so slow and just did not feel the way that they should have felt. So that's what makes me nervous for Acolyte, because
Fair.
there's a lot of Jedi and there's a lot of swinging lightsabers.
Sure.
And like, unless that action is like there, it's going to take away. Like, Boba Fett is a really good example where it's like, it wasn't a good story, but the battle and the fight sequences were so bad.
They were, yeah.
That topped the bad story.
Sure.
Which is just all around not good.
It was just
So,
messy.
but that's what I'm excited.
Messy.
What are you excited for?
I'm excited for Acolyte as well. Specifically Manny Jacinto.
Oh, that's right.
And I'll just leave it at that. Just leave it.
And my drop.
No. Yeah, I'm excited for that one. I'm cautious as well, or whatnot. Live action Star Wars has been
Super
tricky
hit and miss.
as of late. But will I watch it? Yes, 100%. So, yeah, I'm excited for that. But I will say, probably, if anything, or maybe like a bold statement for myself would be that Tales of the Empire will be potentially one of my favorite Star Wars projects of the year, though. Like, that was really incredible. So it did. It showed up, showed out.
Wait, so if you're doing like an S tier list or whatever, Tales of the Empire is above Bad Batch?
For the sake of like what came out this year.
Or in terms of like, stuff that dropped this year.
Like for the sake of going into the week of May the 4th, I was more excited for Bad Batch because, again, I had that like heart, I had the heart of the show and was like very invested in that. But then like the most surprising thing from currently, or, up to the first week of May, how it will be, Tales of the Empire is like, oh, damn, that really came out of nowhere for me. So
I dig it.
We'll see what's up.
See what's up.
Yeah. Kudos to Star Wars. May the 4th be with you, as they say.
And with you.
And also with you.
Live long and prosper. Is what they say, right? No? Different franchise? It's different IP. As always, thank you for listening. You can check us out on youtube.com/KYSO podcast and on TikTok, same handle, KYSO podcast. New pods drop every Saturday.
Woo! See you there.
Mic drop. Don't drop the mic.